much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on the show? I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about a children's book. Now, you guys know how I absolutely love children's book authors. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started with our guest, Ayonna Johnson. Her book, What If God Was in My Pocket? I love it. Good morning, Ayonna. Thank you so much for being on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, as is tradition here on the show, we always ask our guests to introduce themselves to perhaps those few people out there that are unfamiliar with you or with your work. So my first question for you is, what makes you, you?
Everything. A lot of times we think that we're just one type of person, but God is able to kind of melt in so many things that makes us great, what makes us unique, creative. I draw, I paint. I love spending time with my boys and my family. I love talking to people because I'm a counselor. I just love doing so many different things that God has given me the ability to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I love that not only are you an independent woman in that you have your own ministry, you have your own thing going on, but that you also are a first lady. You are the wife of a pastor, and you are a ministry leader with, if I understand correctly, it is Diva Ministry. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I found a way to engage women as well as to promote self-care. Many times as women, we don't do self-care. We're so busy doing for other people and doing things that people need that we very little time that we take for ourselves. So the only homework that the ladies have to do, that the divas have to do for our Bible study is watch a movie. That's it. I take movies and I go through movies frame by frame. I pull out morals and I pull out scriptures that relate to the morals that are within this movie. Listen, we have a fun time. We laugh. We talk about what's going on. We relate to each other, all because we watched a movie. I believe that God talks to us all the time. No matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, there is a revelation in everything. And so divas, the Divas Den Bible Study, Women's Bible Study, we look at movies. We watch movies and we hear from God.
I love it. And you are absolutely right. If we allow ourselves to really kind of free ourselves from the constraints that the day-to-day rat race has on us, we are able to hear from God in every aspect. I love it. I love it. Now, those of you who are listening, she is not just making this stuff up as she goes. She happens to have not only her BA, but 2 master's degrees. One is from seminary, and she is a clinical counselor. So let me tell you, she knows exactly what she is talking about, and I love it. Now, you happen to do another thing, and that is be a children's book author. Being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that that was just another way that you were able to share in your life and assist the children as opposed to just adults?
God has always given me ideas. And one time when I was younger, my mother told me that the difference between you and all of your other relatives is that you're actually going to do what they set out to do, but never put any action to it. And so I've never thought of myself as an author. I never thought of myself really as a writer. If you can ask me on any given day, if you ask me what type of writer are you, I'm like, I'm not that great of a good one. But God is able to use whatever he wants to use to get his message across. And God gave me this idea for this book when I woke up one day, and I wrote it within that day. And from then, God just pushed me like, this has to get out.
I love how, for so many people that I talk to, there is kind of that that prophetic that's placed on your life at a young age. And for those people, I laugh and I go, yeah, you see it when you look back. You go, things were really lining up. Didn't necessarily know it at the time, but things really and truly were lining up for your future things to come to pass. I love it. I love how God works like that. Now, the title of your book, What If God Was in My Pocket? I like the question. How did you come up with that title?
So these are conversations that we have with our boys consistently on integrity, and that even though that we do not see you, God sees you. And so it plays upon that. What if we actually knew that God was actually in our pocket? We had a small miniature Jesus in our pocket. Because we've heard so many adults say, you know what, I can't cuss or I can't act this certain way because I'm in the presence of a minister or because I'm in the house of God. But as soon as they step out those doors or as soon as they get from the presence of that preacher, they are going back to normal. But I tell people all the time, listen, it doesn't matter because even when you leave my presence, you're still in God's presence. And so we tell our children that, listen, you have to watch what you do, watch what you say. Because God is watching. We may not see you all the time, but God is watching. And so what type of person do you want to be? And so it's a cute little idea for kids to imagine, hey, what if God was really in my pocket and seeing everything that I do? What type of person would I actually be?
I love it. And I love how you just kind of, even though you're talking about a children's book, that was a reminder for adults as well. Hey, we need to make sure that we are on our best behavior because our Father God is watching. He is with us everywhere we go. I love that reminder. Thank you. Now, the characters in your book, why did you decide to give them the personality that you did? Tell us a little bit about your main character.
The main character, the boy that's in the story, is my oldest son, Rodriguez the third. And so we talk to him the most because his younger brother is 4 years younger than him. And so we've caught him doing some things. When I thought of a book and he was the first person that came to mind. And then he loves superheroes. He loves having a great, big, evasive imagination. And so I just love his imagination. And so when I thought of a little boy for this book, I couldn't think of anybody else than to have my son's name be in this book because of how creative he is.
Absolutely. I like that. Now, what do you, when your book was completed, how did your children respond to that finished book? I usually ask, how do you respond as the author holding your work? So I guess that could be the flip side. So let's start with the fact that your son's name is in the book and he knows that his name is in the book. How did he respond? And then how did you feel having completed and published your book?
So they were very excited. So in the process of making the book, I had to take pictures of my oldest and different faces for the illustrator. So he knew that he was going to be in the book. And also the names of my other two boys are in the book as well. One thing that I've noticed as a parent is that what you do, your children will emulate, right? And so once I've gotten the book, written it, got it in hand, guess what? They wanted to write a book. My son's like, I'm going to write a book about this. And Christopher is like, I think I'm going to write a book too. My book is going to be about this. And so I've also encouraged them, like, listen, there is no age to getting a book published. When you get your book, we'll look at it, we'll edit it, and we'll do it. And so they're very excited. In fact, both our boys are virtual. Our oldest two are virtual right now. And so Christopher, the middle child, yesterday told his teacher that, hey, my mom wrote a book. This is my mom's book. Can you pick the book? And so it's great to see your children excited. over something that you did. And, it moves from you being excited about yourself and what you're doing to your children actually being involved in it. And that's what I love about it.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. I love it. And to be able to show that finished work, that is amazing. I love how our boys can inspire us to really be the best, because we do know that they are watching us. So I love it. I love it. Now, as far as the age group of the reader, I'm going to say, for some folks as well, the person who I intended the book for may be too young to read themselves, but anyone can read it to them. So what is the ideal age group for the child who the book is intended for?
So the age group would be for elementary kids, because it's just so colorful. But, the message is so impactful that even anybody who picks it up, it could be a middle schooler, it could be a high schooler that says, hey, what is this? What is this about? This looks interesting. Because when you think of integrity, like you said, it even causes us adults to think about if we truly realize that God is always watching, what type of person would I be? And I even done it so that at the end of the book, there are questions, because I believe that when you're reading a book to truly help a child grasp the context of what the book is about, that we ought to ask questions to make them have a self-reflection about the book. And so there's questions in the back that causes them to think of things that they have done, causes them to think of who God truly is to them. And these are all questions that no matter what the age, we all can answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Well, Ayonna, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
What If God Was in My Pocket is the book. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. But if you want an autographed copy, you can go to my website, Emerging Graphics, MERGINGRAPHICS.com. You can buy the book there, and you can contact me. You can also find me on Facebook with my name, Ayonna Johnson.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Ayonna Johnson, and we are talking about her book, What If God Was in My Pocket? Now, I absolutely, positively love the title of that book. And I think even though this is a children's book that we're talking about, adults, I think we can get some inspiration from that title as well. Now, my next question for you is about responses. I know that the world has kind of closed down, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, but perhaps you could draw from, I called it BC, before COVID. What type of responses were you getting from the readers of your book? I'm pretty sure it was words of encouragement.
So this is a COVID book. So although I wrote it before COVID, it was published during COVID. And so the people that have purchased it, there's one mother of two younger children, first grader and a second grader, and she asked the question, and they read the book, and one of them said, God's too big to fit in my pocket. It's like, how can God fit in my pocket? He's too grand. He's too big. And then her daughter said, when she was asking her the questions in the book, and they were going through the book, and she looked at her, and she started to look sad, and she wondered, what's going on? You can talk to me. What are you thinking about? And she was like, Mommy, I don't know if I should say, because I know that every choice that I make is not a superhero choice. And so that was that was great to know for me. And the parents, they loved it as well. And it causes them to think a little bit about what they do, because the book starts off with just the boy thinking, if God was in my pocket, he could see everything that I do. And he starts to envision if he has all these powers that God has and all the great things and fun things that he can do. And then he realizes he sees more than good. And so it's been causing children to truly look at themselves to see, am I always making the right decision? Am I always making the right choices? And it's been starting a great dialogue between parents and their children about the choices that they make.
Absolutely. And I like what you said. It has started a dialogue, and we definitely need to do that. Now, with this being your first book, the process that you used to successfully write the book, did you find that if I remember what you said, you pretty much did it within a certain time span? How did you find the time, or what time worked out best for you when it came to writing and making the decisions as far as how the book needs, how it needs to be laid out, or what the cover needs to look like? How did you make those decisions?
So I wrote the book within a day. God just kept feeding it to me. I wrote the book within a day, one morning. And then I contacted the illustrator. The illustrator, I know she was in one class under me at Hampton University, so I call it the HU combination book. And so I contacted her, and I said, hey, she's a great artist. I said, hey, sis, can we collaborate together? And I sent her my manuscript, and she loved it. And so she started working on the images. And so just from paying for that, and then just kind of working with Westbow Press. And again, I'm new. This is my first book. I did not know what to do, where to go, what company was good. I just looked at reviews and just closed my eyes and and I picked one, which one that I felt that was the best. And so between the printing company, Westbow, and how they laid it out, and then the pictures, and then going through my manuscript to identify what pictures would go with what is, it took probably about a good couple of months for the final, and once we moved some things around. But we are glad, and thank God for the product that has been produced.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love how you were able to network and collaborate with someone that you knew that you could trust, that you were going to have an amazing product with. And that is so important, because I do understand that for so many people, you are worried about those steps. Is this the right publishing company? Is this the right illustrator? Is this right? And you do have those concerns and worries. So I'm so glad that God definitely led you through to make those determinations. I love it. Now, for so many authors, they say, you know what, Dr. Angela, I am one and done. And this is what God told me to do. I did it. I'm just going to sit back and push this one project. Others will say, absolutely not. I think there are numerous books in my future. I am now, I've been bitten by the author's bug. Where do you think that you lie? Do you wish to continue writing?
I do. So as a graphic designer, one of my biggest things about graphics is seeing the final product. Like, I get really excited. Like, after I've created on the computer, getting it printed, and seeing and holding the final product in my hand is really exciting to me. And so while I was writing this book, and so I'm also a military counselor, and so we, especially our elementary counselors, they share books with children. And I do understand that we can't always bring a book that has God in it. So I actually wrote another book that's with the exact same concept of this book, but it looks at it a little differently, so that elementary kids, people with actually who are within school, have no problem or discomfort in reading it. And then I also have an idea for a series of books that will take a child through a one-on-one experience with different cultures. I think it's in this time frame that we don't truly understand one another. We don't understand one's culture because we haven't taken the time to learn about each other. And so that's another idea for another book. And then it keeps coming, doesn't it? And then there's a chapter book that I'm actually in the process of writing now for women. Men could use it too, but it helps to tap into the dreamer that you had before you were married. Because it's my own story, it's my own journey, but I know that I'm not the only person going through this. And so before I got married, God gave me all of these visions. God gave me all of these ideas of things that I wanted to do and wanted to become. But life, right? Life kind of just took over. And I became a mom, and I became a minister and a pastor's wife, and I'm working in the community, and I'm doing certain things, and I have a 9-to-5, and I'm also doing freelance. So it seems as if, like, those dreams that I had are now either pushed to the wayside, forgotten. But the thing is, although we forget about them, God never forgets. And so it's how do I connect back with that person who was before the I do, that dreamer before the I do, to still produce and do what God has called me to do, even while I'm married. And I said, you know what? Maybe the dream that God gave you wasn't really for you to fully fulfill before marriage. Maybe the dream that God really gave you was for you to succeed in marriage. And one thing that I've learned, my husband just successfully defended his dissertation for his doctorate degree. And then one thing that I've learned is that in order to succeed, it's not just a me thing. When I'm married and when I have my family, it's not just a me thing, because while I'm writing, somebody has to cook. While I'm doing my business plan, while I'm mapping that out, somebody has to go and take the kids to practice. And so it's not just a me thing. When I succeed, we all succeed. And so when we change our minds and look at the family as succeeding, and not just this is my vision, this is my dream, me, and changing it to us and we, God can do so much more with us.
I love it. I love it. And you are so right. You are so right. Nothing else needs to be said other than I concur. You have nailed it. I love it. I love it. And thank you for the reminder and for inspiring so many in that statement and in sharing. I love that. I love that. Now, as we wrap up, I always like to give my authors an opportunity to inspire two sets of people. One, the people that they have written their book for that age group, if you will. And then the other side is for their fellow authors. So let's start with your audience. Do you have any words of encouragement for those families out there that would or should purchase a copy of your book?
Like I said, start the dialogue. Let's start the dialogue. What if God was in my pocket? I think so many times our children are too stuck in front of a TV instead of a device, that we're not sitting down at the table and having dinner together, that we're not spending time with each other outside, or even just reading a book. Get the book. What if God is in my pocket? Start the dialogue. I think a lot of times the reason why we have individuals that grow up and end up a certain way is because there was not enough dialogue as a child to actually make them think intellectually and challenge their thinking of what type of person do you want to be? What type of impact do you want to have, not just on your life, but on the lives of others that are around you? What if God was in my pocket? Will cause them to think and look at their choices Are they good? Are they bad? Are they going to impact just me? Or are they going to impact everybody that's around me? Begin the dialogue. Let's get the book. Let's read to our children to encourage reading, because Lord knows that not a lot of them like to read. Let's encourage reading. Let's start the dialogue, and let's help to make this world better by helping our children to choose better, make better choices.
I love it. Flip side of the coin, do you have any words of encouragement for those aspiring authors out there that they feel that they have been called to write, but they're just kind of nervous about actually stepping out there and making it happen? Any words of encouragement or words of wisdom you'd like to share with them?
The struggle is worth it. In a Bible study that I had one day with our women, I said the difference between a dreamer and an author is that the dreamer continues to dream with no action. The author takes the dream and put action to it. And so, yes, I know that there's going to be some sacrifice. You're going to be up late. You're going to be up early. You might have to give a little more out of pocket that you never really wanted to give. And so I had to come to the realization, if I want this dream that God has for me to do and to be completed, then I may also have to put some money to it, as well as time. Don't be scared. God will give you all the resources that you need. But it's time for us to move from just being a dreamer. Some dreamers have awesome ideas, but we never know about them because there's no action. And so it's time for the dreamer to move into action. So move into action. Don't be afraid. Failure can be your friend. Don't think failure is something that is an enemy. Failure teaches you what not to do and what to do so that you can be better. It's okay to fall. God will catch you, and God will make you stronger.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Well, Ayonna Johnson, thank you so much for spending time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I know that you have definitely enlightened, inspired, and empowered someone today. Now, before I let you go, I want to make sure that you remind everyone of the title of this book, where can we pick up a copy, and just as importantly, how do we stay in contact with you?
What If God Was in My Pocket? What If God Was in My Pocket is the book. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. But if you want an autographed copy, you can go to my personal website at Mergin Graphics. That is MERGINGRAPHICS.com. You can buy the book. You can buy graphics. You can buy a shirt. But you can also contact me on that website. Or you can just look me up on Facebook, Ayonna Johnson, AYONNA Johnson. You can look me up there and just stay connected with me. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you and your opinion of what you thought about the book after you have purchased it and read it. What do you think about it?
Absolutely. Thank you again, Ayonna, for being a guest on the show.
Thank you.
And listeners, thank you for spending time with us as well. We hope that we have, again, enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today I want you fired up about our children's book author. Her name is Marinet Brennan, and we are talking about her book, The Juoy Babies. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Marinet. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Good morning, Angela. Lovely to speak to you.
To you as well. Now, as is the custom here on our show, we always give our authors an opportunity to introduce themselves to perhaps the few people out there that are unfamiliar with you or your work. So my first question to you is, what makes you you?
So, my name is Marinet. I'm originally from South Africa, born in the Western Cape. But then in 2002, I moved to Ireland. And then my journey started there. I've been here 18 years. I'm married and I have 4 children. So what makes me is I'm also a speech and language therapist and an audiologist, and I'm just really passionate about writing stories for children just to bring across a particular message or just to inspire children. And especially in my speech language therapy, we use a lot of narratives just to teach children as well.
Absolutely. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that it simply presented itself along your life's path?
Do you know, no, I never thought of myself as an author, but I read this absolutely amazing book once. It's called The Artisan Soul. It's by Irvin Raphael McManus. And he basically wrote, he said that, we are all created to create. And we all have that creative sort of spirit in us. And the one night he was then 8-year-old, came to me after I was reading him a few Bible stories like Noah's Ark and the Garden of Eden and the Tower of Babel. And he turned to me and he said to me, "Mom, why is God so mean?" And I have to say, it really broke my heart because our family went through quite a challenging time in 2016. We were expecting twins, and the twins were diagnosed with severe fetal abnormalities. And God had been so good in our life, and just the thought of my 8-year-old sort of almost like questioning why is God so mean, it saddened me. So I thought, the best way is to use a narrative, to write him a story, because words have power, and because it's also not so directive, and you can actually just present, whatever message you want through story. And I guess that's how I decided, that I should sit down and write this story about the Juoy babies for my 8-year-old son to show him how good God is.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love how children have a very curious way of lining up perspective in a way that sometimes we as adults we don't see it the same way, and how they present opportunity to us to be our best selves, to be our most enlightened self, if you will, because we see it through their eyes, and then we're able to express a different narrative. And that's exactly what you did. And I think that's so beautiful that you allowed that to be a teachable moment, not just in your family, but in other people's families as well. I love that. I love it. Now, when you were writing, you chose to give a certain personality, if you will, to your main character. How did you come up with the names, and how did you come up with the personality of your main character?
So basically, there's sort of 2 main characters, and like I said, I basically wanted to write an adventure story for my son, but a story with deeper meaning, looking at how can you incorporate in this adventure stories your biblical principles and some of your Bible stories. I didn't want it to be about religion. I wanted to sort of reflect for my son what faith looks like, what hope looks like, and what love should look like. So I basically decided on looking at, say, getting King Abner and Lita. So they're the 2 main characters in the story, and they're basically at a very small level. They're the creative ambassadors of God and Jesus, and just reflecting the character of God and the character of Jesus and their attributes through the dialogue and the choices Alita makes. So I was sort of aiming just to inspire and sort of reignite a curiosity in wanting to read the Bible and wanting to learn more about Jesus and wanting to learn more about God's love for us. So yeah, that's King Abner and Lita, the two main characters. And Lita means light. So I thought that sort of it looks more at how can we choose to lead a light-filled life. So that's why I chose the name Lita.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Now, I love that you say that the book is, even though it's a children's book, it is a book for all ages. What would you say is the ideal age group, as far as we do know that sometimes we have to read a book to a child that they maybe not be able to read quite themselves. So what would be the age group for the youngest child? Are you thinking elementary school? Would it be appropriate for someone in pre-kindergarten? What's the age group there?
So it's say, like, I read it to my 6-year-old, and so it's a story that you can read and then you can pause and you can discuss. So it allows for plenty sort of discussions, and you can reflect on the story and ask questions. Where at that stage, my 8-year-old, he sat down and he read it himself. So I'd say sort of from about 6 years onwards, it's you can read it to your 6-year-old, but from 8 years onwards, the child will be able to read it himself.
I like that. So you're still able to enjoy story time with your little one, but then as they're older, they can enjoy story time alone. I like it. I like it. Now, with you being one of our international guests today, the question of where does the story take place may be a particular question for our international audience. Where did you set the surroundings for this book?
So there's sort of 3 places where the story takes place. So first and foremost, you've got King Abner and Lita. So they're Juoy babies. And just something, briefly about the Juoy babies is the Juoy babies' names were selected sort of around the creative story. So it's just looking at Lita being the light, but then, the second day is looking at the divide between the sky and the water. So we've got the Sky Juoy baby and the Aqua Juoy baby, and then we've got Twinkle and Iris and Luna. So there's plenty of different Juoy babies there, and they all live in the land of Paradise, which is like a paradise, like this Eden-like a place, this Eden-like land, where each of them walk in a specific creative purpose. And that's where the story is set. But then Lita chooses to go down to the dark, desolate land of Farah, which is just void and dark. And there's no light there, although she's the light. She brings the light there. And through their travels in the land of Farah, they have to cross over the ominous valley of Plaga. So, and that's looking at all the 10 plagues, bringing in a lot of the stories of the 10 plagues, just to bring in the whole adventure side of it as well. So that's sort of where the story is set.
I love it. I love it. It does take you across a vast land, even if it is at this particular point a virtual land. That's beautiful. I love that they're able to travel that way. Now, for so many of our authors, they look at their books as kind of like their children. This is their baby. They created it. It took a lot of sacrifice, and they finally have this published work. With that being said, I know it may be hard to choose, but do you happen to have a favorite character, or do you have a favorite or a more favorite personality that you created in this book?
I have to say it has to be Lita, and it's basically just, she's a courageous character. She's light-filled. She's full of life. She brings joy to people. She enjoys sharing her light and her love to others. So I have to say Lita by far is my favorite character.
I can understand that. Well, Marinet, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how can we stay in contact with you?
So the title is The Juoy Babies by Marinet Brennan. And you can find out a little bit more about the Juoy babies on my website, so www.juoybabies.com. I'm also on Instagram and on Facebook, and copies are available to purchase on Amazon, Waterstones, everything online, Life Reach Publishing, and Barnes and Noble.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butts-Chester. My guest today is Marinet Brennan, and we're talking about her book, The Juoy Babies. And you guys know that I love children's book authors because they write in a way that is helping to shape the minds of our little ones. And I think that is definitely a special calling. Well, Marinet, my next question for you is dealing with your the process that you use to complete your book. Did you find that you needed to write like during a certain time of the day or in a certain place? I know for some people it's first thing in the morning before everyone wakes up, or at the end of the day, kind of like in the middle of the night when everyone is asleep. Did you find that you needed a particular atmosphere or environment in order to write?
So my writing process was a little bit different because having 4 children, so the twins are 4, and then I have a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old. So life is quite busy, and I'm also working. So I have this hour where I walk home, and while I'm walking home, I usually listen to a radio station. We've got this fabulous radio station called Spirit Radio, and the music is just so inspirational. And I just found that the music that I listen to on Spirit Radio, it inspires creativity, and that's sort of what helps me with my writing. So I'll be walking and I'll be listening, say, to one of Hillsong's songs about 100 billion times, and then you'll see Lita in Paradise, or you'll listen to Waymaker, and then you see Lita walking through the dark lands of Farah. So I'll either do little voice recordings on my phone, or I'll just remember, sort of like a certain scene in pictures. And when I come home, I quickly scribble it out down on paper. So I had all these pieces of paper lying around my bed. And then when lockdown happened, I collated everything into a book. And that was my writing process.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. And you mentioned something there, and I remember explaining to someone that I see words as pictures. Especially when someone is explaining something, I try to create the movie, if you will, or like the video of what they're saying, and how would this look if it were fluid, if you could turn this into action. So the fact that you're listening to the music and that inspires you to write the scene, I 1000% understand that. And it's such a beautiful way of turning that music into a different art, which then in turn creates this atmosphere for the reader. I love it. I love it. Now, when you were choosing the illustrations, I asked this question of adults, and it's usually the cover of the book. But of course, with children's books, there's so many more pictures that are involved, and it's a different type of process. How did you select your illustrator? And once you selected that person, how were you able to convey to them how you saw your book in your mind's eye? What was that process like?
So that was really amazing because, like I said, I never really thought this book will get so far to be published. I wrote it, I compiled everything during lockdown, during the time of the first lockdown here in Ireland. And I sent it off to my sister, and I said to her, when you have a moment, do you want to read this book? I've written it for my son, Patrick, and I explained to her the reasoning behind it. And she came back very quickly and she said, this is fantastic. We have to get it published. And I said, but getting illustrations are so expensive. She said, don't worry. I'm going to find you somebody. And she was just amazing. She found this woman, Mari van Griene. She has a company called Dragonfly Literature. And Mari is a proofreader and an author and a poet and an illustrator. But most important is that she was studying also to become a pastor. And she just got the story. And she just sort of kept reminding me how important this story is. And, to be honest, she needed hardly any guidance. I sent her sort of like a line drawing of what I want King Abner to look like roughly, and the same with the Juoy babies. And the rest was just all her own initiative. And her enthusiasm was it was inspirational. I have to say, like, all her pictures were hand painted and then scanned over to me. So it was a wonderful process.
I love it. I love it. And I just love how it all comes together. When you find the right person, then it just creates this beautiful end result. And speaking of end result, how did you feel when you held your book in your hands? It's, the finished product. It is ready to be sold to the public. How did it feel in that moment?
The most amazing thing happened. It was my son's birthday. He turned 9 and the doorbell rang and this box arrived. And I opened it up, and it was the book that I had written to him. I couldn't believe it. Like you say, miracles still happen. And for me, even in a small sense, I just thought that was just amazing that on the day of his birthday, the book arrived from the States. So yeah, no, it was a very joyful occasion.
Oh my goodness! What an awesome thing! You'll never forget that. And it's a beautiful. It's more than just like a conversation piece, if you will, but it's like definitely a memory that you can write down in your journal and say, look at the wonderful things that happened on this day in history. So I love it. I love it. To me, people laugh because they say that I have kind of an interesting outlook on life, if you will, because for me, those are those God moments, those moments that bring you your own personal joys that might not be special to anyone else, but for you, for each individual, I will never forget the day that this happened because, and that is one of those stories. It's his birthday, my book is here. Oh, joy, so I love it. Now, when you were writing the story, did you find that you had any particular part that you really found yourself excited to write? Not saying that you weren't excited or pleased with the other parts, but was there any particular part that really brought you an extra bit of excitement or happiness while you were writing?
I guess it's the chapter on hope. And like I said, the reasoning behind why I felt it was so important to show to my son that God is a good God, and just the hope that we have when we have, God and Jesus in our life. And I guess it's the chapter the chapter is called Hope. And there was just this one verse where King Abner said to Lita, Lita actually said to King Abner, she said, it's not hopeless. There is always hope. And King Abner turns to her and said, you're right, Lita. And she said that, there's no such thing as hopelessness. Where there is light, there is hope. And you have my blessing to be that light. And I just think that was such an important message for me and even for my family, because when we were told at the 22-week scan that our twins were suffering from severe fetal abnormalities, it was that hope that we were able to hold on to, that yes, despite getting this really, really bleak news, that, God has a purpose and God has a plan for us. And even just that verse of Jeremiah 29 verses 11 of, my plans for you are to prosper you, to give you a hope and a future. And because this book is based on biblical principles, that was something I really wanted just to shine through, that in Jesus we have hope, we can trust on him. And I think that's also the main theme of the book, the title, The Juoy Babies. It's spelled Juoy, like the life buoy, because Jesus is the life buoy that we hold on to when we feel like we're drowning. When the waves crash down on us, He is our Savior. He is our strength. So that's what I was hoping to come through in that chapter, and that's probably my favorite chapter in the book.
Oh, what a beautiful answer. And I can definitely understand why. I love that. Absolutely. And listeners, I know I'm not going to go on. Jeremiah 29:11 is what I refer to as my life verse. And it is what helped me get through my breast cancer fight. So, absolutely, there is a plan and a hope. So thank you so much for sharing that. That is definitely inspirational to most people. I love it. Now, for so many authors, they will express and say, I'm one and done, Dr. Angela. I've written the one book God called me to write, and I've done it. I'm through. Others will say, I've been bitten by the author's bug. I think there are more to come. So my question for you is, where do you stand? Do you wish to write more books, or do you think this is it?
No, do you know, I already have a sequel sort of halfway written, but I first just want to see where the Juoy baby is going. And even if I just write the sequel for my son Patrick, I will be happy. At the moment, like, I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to Facebook and social media and Instagram and all of that. So at the moment, because the book was only published at the end of last year, so I'm just trying to raise a little bit of awareness about the story about the Juoy babies. Maybe even looking at, say, just even starting like a little Juoy baby fan club, because like I said, all the Juoy babies have such, great names around the creative story, and getting children to send in photographs, just to get them away from, the television and things like that, and get them out in nature so that they can celebrate nature. So we're thinking of maybe just raising a little bit more awareness of the Juoy babies. And then if there is interest, then I'll look at taking the sequel further. And that one is a little bit more based on the prophecy and the strongholds on life. So it's still the same kind of a story with Lita and the Juoy babies and King Abner, but it's just focusing a little bit different on a different theme.
Yes, I can understand that. I love that you're already looking forward, that you're saying, oh, this could be touched on and this could be touched on, and let's see how it goes. I think that is definitely smart. Now, my last question for you is, and I always ask my authors to share a piece of advice, and that is for, of course, our aspiring authors out there, be it that they're writing a children's book or they're writing one that touches on faith or not. Do you have any words of wisdom or bits of encouragement to give to our aspiring authors out there?
I have to quote just a line again from The Artisan Soul that Irvin Raphael McManus said, and he wrote, and he said that Van Gogh once wrote, and he said, if you hear a voice within you say, I cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. And I just think that, if you listen to that, and if you believe that we've been created by a creative God, and He created us in our image, in His image and likeness, and He's created us with imagination and creativity, then we should all be creating. All humans are artists. And we should stop comparing ourselves and saying, I'm not going to be as good as this author. We're all unique. We all have a story to tell, and we all have that creative ability.
I love it. And you are right. We all have that creative energy. I love it. Well, Marinet, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing about your book and giving us all a bit of inspiration. Before I let you go, though, please remind everyone one last time, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
So the title of the book is The Juoy Babies by Marinet Brennan. It's available Online on Amazon, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, through LifeReach Publishing. And then also you can stay in touch on www.juoybabies, and Joy is spelled Juoy, babies.com, Instagram, and on Facebook.
I love it, Marinet. Thank you again for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today.
Thank you so much.
And listeners, thank you for spending time with us as well. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day.